Hello there. This is to Sean B.W. Parker for Empowering the Innocent TV and False Allegations Watch. And today we're talking to Mr. Mike Naughton of Lewis Legal Investigators, and it's a justice reform company, which he will talk about in a minute. Not to be mistaken with Dr. Michael Naughton of the University of Bristol and Empowering the Innocent. He's a different person, and it's a small community, and it's a thing that we should always point out, just in case kind of watchers don't know who they're watching. This is Mike Naughton, and so hi, Mike. How's it going?
Afternoon, it's going well. I'm at the end of a very, very busy week for me. Back from a couple of days down south taking witness statements and doing my investigations on a case. The company is Lewis Legal Limited, and sub heading I would suggest would be miscarriages of justice investigations.
Right. Yeah. Thank you for that. So what's the genesis of the Lewis Legal Company itself?
Genesis is back in 2008. At the time, I was serving as a special constable within North Wales Police Service. I'd spent quite some years with a keen interest in criminal law. In fact, it became the police operational handbook, became my bedside reading. And then in 2008, I was offered an opportunity by another private investigator who wanted to hire me to do some surveillance work. During the time when I served with the military, I worked on a communications intelligence gathering unit within the military. So sitting in a bush covered in squirrel poo was I was actually quite used to doing, and and that is where it all began really. I took the job. I had to resign from North Wales Police Special Constabulary, um, obviously because it was a conflict of interest.
Hmm.
But from doing a little bit of surveillance here and there, I then developed my own private investigations company, which for the first couple of years, I'll put my hands up and say that it was predominantly the good old fashioned cheating husband, cheating wife, armed with a decent camera and a couple of tracking devices. And it was in 2010, which leads us on quite nicely. I was approached to carry out some criminal defence work on what was to become the Robin Garbutt trial.
Uh, yeah, Mr. Robin Garbutt. We kind of met in real life, sort of talking at the Empowering the Innocent conference back in
Yeah,
April or May. Give us a quick oversight about what happened with Robin.
so Robin Garbutt was a postmaster who, in March the 23rd, March the 24th, 2010, um, opened up his post office in the early hours, as he did each morning from about 4:30 onwards. His regular stream of customers who met him, whom he was, as always, as Robin is, because I've met him before, delightful gentleman, very pleasant, very chatty, even at 4:30 in the morning, selling his newspapers, sandwiches, crisps, whatever people wanted as they passed through the village of Melsonby. At approximately 8:30 in the morning, um, a man with wearing a ski mask and a handgun came in through the back of the post office, demanding that Robin empty the contents of the safe into his bag, stating that he shouldn't do anything stupid. I'm not paraphrasing, this is words as I remember them, stating that he shouldn't do anything stupid because they'd got his wife upstairs. Robin did as they asked. The gunman left. Robin went upstairs to discover that his wife, Diana Garbutt, had been murdered in the bed where she lay. 3 blows to the head, and the final fatal blow was a blow to just above her right temple, which caused her death. Robin was obviously Robin raised the alarm. Neighbours came to help, and subsequently Robin was arrested and made prime suspect for the murder of Diana Garbutt, for which in the following year, which again I think it was April 2011, he was subsequently found guilty and sentenced to 20 years imprisonment. Since that day, Robin has vehemently denied any involvement in the murder of Diana Garbutt. There has been a vast amount of evidence which draws into question the evidence that the police obtained and presented to the courts for his prosecution. But there's a vast amount of evidence which also draws into question whether or not the police acted legally, fully, and in line with what is then and now the CPIA 1996, which is the act that the police must follow when carrying out an investigation, which relays everything from how they act, the directions of an investigation, and disclosure of evidence. So 2 days later, after the murder of Diana Garbutt, search officers found what they claim was the murder weapon, which was I'd say probably a 24-inch piece of hollow cast iron, rusted, which was found on top of a wall directly opposite the post office, the wall being approximately 8.5 to 9 feet high. And I know that because I've actually been there. So this was the murder weapon that was, or one of the many items that was removed by the police. And if you scrutinise the method in which the police obtained these pieces of as potential evidence, straight away the questions to be asked is did the police follow the correct procedure with regards to securing and preserving evidence? So it was deemed that this DNA was found on the metal bar. A small amount of DNA from Diana Garbutt was found on the metal bar. There was also DNA from a other person that was never identified that was found on the metal bar, and there was also DNA from the police officer who found the metal bar. So it was deemed that this must have been the murder weapon. So, as I say, I was called in September 2010, so 6 months after the murder of Diana, where I spoke to a number of neighbours, and each of the neighbours that I spoke to all gave me the same story. They all said that when they tried to speak to the police about potential suspicious movements that had been noted in the village prior to the robbery and the murder, that the police very quickly diverted this line of statement away, saying, it's okay, we will deal with that another time. So they actually weren't interested in any other direction, which, again, to go back to CPIA 1996, is a direct breach of Section 3.5. Section 3.5 of CPIA 1996 clearly states that investigators must follow lines of investigation or lines of inquiry which may take them away from the suspect and towards other persons.
Absolutely. Just to interrupt quickly here, sort of as an ex-policeman yourself, that's correct, right? Yeah. What is going on with the Andy Malkinson thing, with the Robin Garbutt thing of he'll do, leave it there? What do you really think is going on there?
They're happy with the conviction. The police are given targets. They see what they consider to be a prime suspect, and when a member of the public is murdered within the vicinity, the first prime suspect is usually the person's partner, their husband, or an partner, husband or wife. Let's keep it equal. And that is their direction of that is their direction of investigation. When in reality, this isn't always the case. You know, by rights, if we start looking at DNA found on a murder weapon, then you've got to ask the question, why wasn't the police officer who found the murder weapon prime suspect? His DNA was actually found on the murder weapon, and he couldn't account for how his DNA was found on the murder weapon. So don't get me wrong, I've got absolutely no suspicion that the police officer who found the murder weapon was actually involved in the murder. However, what it does scream to me is, again, the way evidence was obtained, the way evidence was then preserved. You know, I think the trial judge at the time, in his comments, quite clearly compared North Yorkshire Police with Keystone Cops. If it wasn't the judge, it was the media. There were so many mistakes with this, with the investigation. To give you one example, and in the evening, around about 2200 hours on the night of the murder, approximately 20 miles away, a replica handgun and a balaclava, I've been reliably informed, was obtained by Cleveland Police Force. Cleveland Police Force, I'm reliably informed, still have this evidence to date. This evidence has never, as far as I'm aware, been DNA tested. It has never been requested by North Yorkshire Police. Now, the normal procedure when in a major incident such as this is that the police force, in this case North Yorkshire Police, should have sent out a surrounding message to all constabularies with regards to the murder of Diana Garbutt, so that anything at all that may come up as suspicious should be logged and reported back to North Yorkshire Police. So my rhetorical question to North Yorkshire Police would be, why has this handgun and this balaclava never, ever been obtained? I asked the same question of the CCRC, because I'm aware that in my report, in a recent report I did on behalf of Robin Garbutt, when I say recent, I mean a couple of years ago now.
Sorry, just to, could you quickly explain what the CCRC is to our viewers?
Yeah, the CCRC is your last chance saloon for an appeal against a conviction. The CCRC are alleged to be a totally independent body to the criminal justice system. They are the people that are investigators. They are people with knowledge of the law that look at any new evidence that's presented on a case. And when that new evidence is presented, they make a decision as to whether or not that evidence has any validity and would assist in an appeal against a conviction. Now, it has to be stressed that the CCRC have great powers, and they do have great powers. They can call evidence from the police, they can get evidence from overseas, they have great powers. Now, my personal dealings with the CCRC, not just in the Robin Garbutt case, but in a couple of other cases I've had dealings with, is the CCRC are very, very quick to shut you down when you start to ask questions. I'll give you a very brief example, a very, very brief example of a what's the word I'm looking for? Non-compliance with the CCRC. In a case I was dealing with, a female claimed that her ex-husband tried to drown her in a bath in Dubai on their honeymoon. Now, I obtained clear evidence that there was not a bath in the hotel room where they were staying. I directed the CCRC to a police station in Dubai where the police are literally waiting for the CCRC to ask for this evidence, which is a witness statement from the hotel manager, which will give a clear and comprehensive chronology of the complainant's stay at the hotel, which clearly demonstrates that the complainant lied when they said that their husband tried to drown them in this specific hotel room. Now, my obvious conclusion to that would be that if this complainant has lied regarding the existence of a hotel bath in a hotel room and an alleged attempt to drowning, then had this evidence been presented as fact to a jury, along with other evidence that I obtained, then would this have not called into question the honesty and integrity and the accuracy of the account of the complainant? But sorry, so I digress. So the CCRC, this is what they do. I pull no punches with the CCRC. Their record on recommending cases back to the appeal court is absolutely abysmal, and it is abysmal. And we've recently got the Horizon scandal. Sorry, Sean.
I was just going to say, it looks like it's supposed to be abysmal, especially after the Andy Malkinson thing has opened that to the country, hasn't it? It just looks like it's designed that way.
And I'm surprised people are still in post. I really am. I'm surprised that people haven't put their hands up and said, I have failed this organisation and I should walk. You know, I can only go with what has been stated in the media, that the CCRC had the evidence years before that Andy Malkinson was innocent. And they've held on to that evidence in the same manner. And I jump back to Robin Garbutt, and forgive me if it seems I am presenting the Robin Garbutt case predominantly, but why not? I will. You know, we keep presenting little bits of new evidence to the CCRC, and they say, no, that's no good. No, that's no good. And, you know, I am aware that another application, not appeal, is about to go into the CCRC, again, with compelling evidence that I have personally obtained in this instance that Robin Garbutt is innocent. And yet I don't hold my breath, and Robin doesn't hold his breath, because even if the CCRC were to come forward and say, yeah, you've got an appeal against conviction, you know, and I know, Sean, it could be years before he's still released. Instead of looking at each appeal, so if an appeal fails, they don't really look at that appeal. They need to look at every single appeal, and they need to piece these pieces of the appeals together like a big jigsaw. And suddenly you've not just got little bits here and there where the police failed, where the DNA wasn't right, where the murder weapon is now questionable, and if it was actually placed on the wall following the murder, to the handgun, the balaclava. All these pieces need to be put together, and it pushes you away. The big thing with the Robin Garbutt, and this was again turned down by the CCRC, was the time of death. The time of death given by the then coroner at the case gave a time of death which dropped within just a few hours. Not surprisingly, the few hours where the police alleged that Diana Garbutt had been murdered, to a second coroner's report, who's far more, I'm led to believe, superior than the original coroner, who gives a much wider time of death that would actually overtake the actual last known time of Diana Garbutt being alive. And the one thing I do need to mention here, which was dismissed at trial, was one of the regular customers of Robin Garbutt, who came into the post office in the early hours, not long after it opened, and he heard a female voice from upstairs shout something similar to something to Robin, to which Robin replied either yes, die, or yes, dear. Now, at this stage, it was approximately 6:30 in the morning, so Diana Garbutt was still alive. However, this was dismissed as court and fobbed off by the judge as being a potential false allegiance to Robin Garbutt or a false memory. You know, it's absolutely unbelievable. You know, so we've now got the new coroner's time, the new coroner's time of death. And again, this has been knocked back. Why has it been knocked back? Why are the CCRC not following up their own investigations? They've got the powers, but they don't do it. Why don't the CCRC obtain the handgun and the ski mask that was found 20 miles away from where Diana Garbutt had been murdered? They've got the powers and they've not done it. And it is an absolute shambles, in my opinion. Now, it wouldn't surprise me if all the cases that are now being re-looked at due to the Horizon scandal, it wouldn't surprise me if the CCRC don't put each one of those cases through as a separate acceptance to go through to the Court of Appeal, because this would then push up their appeals quota, won't it? You know, so if you've got 100 postmasters who they now believe were in fact innocent based on what was the Horizon scandal of the post office, you've suddenly got another 100. Instead of it going through, by rights, it should only go through as one approval for an appeal against conviction. And the other thing we need to consider, jumping back to Robin's case, is although he was charged with the murder of Diana Garbutt, and it is alleged that he stole, I don't know exactly the figure, but a few £1,000s from his post office, then let somebody answer the question.
£16,000, wasn't it?
15,000. I was going to say 16, so £15,000 from the post office. So why was he never charged with theft?
I've been asking that question of Jane Metcalf, and she's like, has no idea what the ski mask, the balaclava, £15,000, all of these loose things everywhere.
I would love at this opportunity to talk about the new evidence that has recently been submitted. However, the last thing I want to do is, the last thing I want to do is spoil any chance that Robin has actually got. All I can say is that the evidence that has now been obtained, and it's taken me a few years to get it from a very, very, very reliable source who's provided evidence of its authenticity. It is absolutely undeniable that Robin Garbutt is innocent of the murder of Diana Garbutt, and it's something that we are really keep holding on to. The one thing I would suggest is, or allege, is I'm aware that the faults with the Horizon scandal now post-date the Robin Garbutt case. So the question has to be is, how much did the post office know about the faults with the Horizon scandal? And I would pose a question, were they instrumental in dumbing down the theft of funds from the post office, because they potentially knew that this may come back to bite them on the rear, as it has done in the last few years? That is only a suggestion. I'm not making any sort of accusations, any way, shape, or form, but it has to be a suggestion. Did they know? Was that the reason why he was never charged?
Absolutely, Mike, and that's a fantastic sort of line to be. Let's kind of come back onto this thing, onto ETI next year, and for an update on all that. Why not? Let's skip on a little bit now. If anybody else wants to find out some more about the Garbutt case, they can go to the Jane Metcalf documentary, also on ETI TV, next to this.
Absolutely. Jane Metcalfe is one of the nicest people you will ever meet. She's become my wife and I best friend, and she is sound, she is solid, and she is 100% behind Robin Garbutt for no other than her loyalty and the fact that she knows, like many of us, that Robin Garbutt is innocent.
Yeah, absolutely. Objective as we are.
As we
I
are.
want to do a quick one here, not too long because we're running slightly out of time. But it's like Mr. Julian Wright is another person whose case you kind of had a look at, isn't he?
Yes.
Just a little nutshell about Julian for us.
Julian Wright was arrested at a property that he owned. However, he was only staying there very temporarily, and there was a seizure of some drugs, some cash, some cards, he was arrested along with two other people. Now, Julian came to me last year, or was it early this year? I think it was the back end of last year, and I first looked at his case. And what we identified in Julian's case, and what I allege, is that officers in the case have, I allege, fabricated evidence in an effort to convict Julian Wright. I found issues with the book 101, which I would love for officers of the Metropolitan Police to explain the circumstances of those. And I've also found anomalies within the way the full chronology of the report is listed in what was found where, what was found when. Now, the evidence against Julian Wright was that his fingerprints were found on a carrier bag that contained cannabis. However, his fingerprints weren't actually found on the container where the cannabis was actually found. It was found within a plastic container. So my question, quite rightly, would be, if he's got his fingerprints on a carrier bag and yet they're not on the container where the cannabis was found, then why not? This was a carrier bag from a supermarket called Budgeon's. Now, Budgeon's are a well-known small, medium-sized supermarket chain in the UK. A supermarket chain where any one of us could shop, any one of us could carry home goods in a carrier bag. So my question is, how could they say that Julian had any part in the drugs being in the actual carrier bag? There was no fingerprints of Julian Wright's on the individual bags of cannabis. There was no fingerprints, as I've mentioned, on the plastic bucket where the cannabis, the bag of cannabis, the Budgeon's bag was found with the cannabis inside. So the only evidence was that at some point in time, Julian had held that Budgeon's bag, and that's it. So my question is, and then there's also anomaly as to exactly when does the carrier bag appear in evidence, because again, I call into question the evidence within the book 101 and the evidence of what was actually submitted after the seizure at the property. And was there a green Budgeon's carrier bag seized and handed in? I can't see it. It's in the book 101. However, the numbering system in the book 101 does not follow sequence. It was almost, if somebody was to make a guess, and it is purely a guess and a suggestion, I'd suggest that an extra page has been potentially added to a book 101. But then why would a police officer do that? Because we all know that's a criminal offence. It's a criminal offence and an act to pervert the course of justice and then perjure themselves in a court of law. So, however, the anomalies are there. and I've put it into my report, and I stand by my report. And I would challenge the police to come back and explain as to exactly how the evidence actually formats in a true and honest chronology.
Yeah, yeah.
That's my very diplomatic. That's my extremely diplomatic answer.
Well, that's what we do on here, isn't it? Obviously,
Absolutely, yeah.
Kind of his appeal also continues, as does Robin's. It's all unconcluded stuff, and there's lots of us like that. As we wind up, and just like chucking it in at the end for a cultural point, because it's here we are. Mr. Russell Brand over the last couple of days has been blanket news. Everybody listening is going to know what happened. Do you think it's a conspiracy stitch-up, or do you think he's been falsely accused, or something else?
I think Russell Brand, as a younger man, was extremely stupid. I think he thought
as he said himself. He did say that himself.
He said himself. Well, there you go. So he can't sue me. So I think he was very stupid. He's not my favourite comedian. He's not my favourite actor. He's not my favourite person. But you can sense there's a but coming here. Well, I'll not say, but I'll say, however, I believe this is a complete and utter media stitch-up for the sole purpose of ruining Russell Brand's career and having him removed from the public eye. And that is my honest opinion. I think all of us, and I put something on Twitter this morning, I think all of us have done things in our past that we're not proud of. All of us have done things that if we could turn back the clock, we would do, and we would unright that wrong, because we're moving into an age. I'm almost 60 years old now in a couple of months' time, and we look back and I think we grow wiser, and we grow even more mature, and we accept that we've done things that we shouldn't have done. And I think, yeah, he's done things he shouldn't have done. He's got away with things that he shouldn't have done. That he said, we all remember the phone calls that he was making with Jonathan Ross, and I'm sure in hindsight he's not proud of the hurt and distress that he caused there. I think, but for somebody to suddenly remember that they felt as though they were sexually abused by Russell Brand umpteen years ago does open up the floodgates for all the other people that have never met Russell Brand, who also remember being sexually abused by Russell Brand. It's a bit like the Jimmy Savile case. Yeah, Jimmy Savile, in my opinion, was guilty of the offences for which he was accused. Was he guilty of all of the offences for which he's accused? I'd say probably not. And I think that.
And the thing about the Brand case is that the floodgates haven't apparently led to a bunch of people coming forward. Quite the opposite. A bunch of people have come forward to say he was a total gentleman, or it just, he was fine with it.
Absolutely, yeah. The media had been paid to go on a fishing trip. Excuse me. The media had been paid to go on a fishing trip, and sadly, the members of the public don't see these fishing trips. They don't. They see what they see in the headlines of a newspaper, and they jump on it and they believe it. And what a terrible man he is. Yeah, the guy's been an idiot. The guy's been an absolute dick. Is he sorry for what he's done in the past? Yeah, I'd say he is. I'm sorry for some of the things that I've done in my past that I'm not proud of. And and I think all of us have got, little things that we'd like to put right.
And he isn't a dick anymore. He's not promiscuous anymore. He's a reformed character who's doing things.
Absolutely.
And he's kind of telling a lot of truth, which is apparently much more dangerous than his old sexual ways. And that's
absolutely
all the lies.
And it's since he's matured and since he's become an honest man that I agree wholeheartedly with a lot of what Russell Brand says. I do follow him, and I listen to what he has to say. I listen to what he alleges, and it's a lot of what he says is happening. A lot of it is in plain sight. The one thing I'd like to just touch on before we finish, Sean, is the concept of regret rape. regret rape is something that I come across in a number. I have to say that the vast majority of the cases where I'm involved are historical and more recent alleged sexual offences, where a person has alleged rape or alleged sexual assault, and my client has totally denied this, goes to prison for quite a number of years. When I say my client, I mean clients. My client obviously will not accept guilt. He will go to prison, let's say he'll go to prison before he will accept guilt. And what seems to come out quite often in these cases, Sean, is regret rape. Regret rape is not rape. Regret rape is maybe 10 seconds after having a sexual encounter with another person, 10 minutes, 10 hours, 10 days, 10 years, 10 months, 10 months or 10 years, whatever, it doesn't matter. If after the event you regret having sex with that person, and yet at the time you consented, then it is not rape. You would be surprised how many people.
Yeah. It's about to pack in. We're going to have a part 2 on this. We opened up a massively interesting subject just as it runs out, Mike.
Oh, I can talk. Sean,
as
my wife is in the other room, will tell you, I can talk